NASA has confirmed that Voyager 2, one of humanity's most ambitious and far-traveling spacecraft, has now entered the vast realm known as interstellar space.
NASA is saying the Voyager 2 probe is now in a space between the stars.
And finally, NASA on Tuesday said that it has found a heartbeat signal,
a cold, unlit region beyond the influence of our sun. But this milestone comes with a chilling and unexpected twist. In a recent development that has quietly shaken parts of the scientific community, NASA revealed that the spacecraft, which launched in 1977 and has sailed silently through the cosmos for more than 4 decades, transmitted a strange and final signal before going dark. What was received wasn't a routine status check, nor a fading echo of failing instruments, but something far more puzzling. A short, irregular burst that has been described by some as a heartbeat-coded transmission that defies every known pattern Voyager 2 was ever programmed to send. For decades, Voyager 2 had faithfully fulfilled its role as an emissary of Earth, drifting farther into the void than any human-made object other than its twin Voyager 1. It carried with it the hopes of an entire species, a fragile golden disk, inscribed with the sounds and languages of Earth, a greeting in case it encountered something out there capable of understanding. That hope, romantic and bold, was always accompanied by an undercurrent of fear, the unspoken question of whether it was truly wise to advertise our presence in a cosmos whose silence might not mean absence, but restraint. And now, after more than 46 years of uninterrupted data, Voyager 2 has fallen silent in a way no one anticipated. Initially, the signal spike appeared to be nothing out of the ordinary. It was faint, erratic, and consistent with what one might expect from a craft nearly 20 billion kilometers away. Engineers at NASA's Deep Space Network prepared for routine analysis. But once the signal was decrypted and examined frame by frame, something uncanny emerged. The transmission bore none of the standard diagnostic formats, none of the telemetry or sensor pings that normally defined Voyager 2's communication. It wasn't merely corrupted data or a mechanical stutter, it was something else. A fragmented broadcast layered with irregular frequency patterns, suddenly terminating, not failure, but stopping, with an eerie finality that seemed to suggest not failure, but interference. What unsettled the mission team wasn't simply the loss of signal. After all, Voyager 2 had exceeded its intended lifespan by decades. What disturbed them deeply was what occurred in the final 3 seconds before the blackout. The spacecraft's instruments recorded a sharp spike in electromagnetic activity, an unnatural burst, localized and unlike anything encountered in that sector of space. This was not cosmic background noise or solar radiation. It was far too focused, it was too precise, there was a modulation to it, a structure in the frequency shift that resembled the logic of encryption, not in content, but in intent. It didn't behave like a cosmic accident. It behaved like a message. Adding to the mystery was a sudden shift in the spacecraft's orientation, as though something had nudged it, or as if the probe itself had attempted to turn away from something it had just encountered. Then, abruptly, everything ceased. Not a dwindling power curve, not a progressive systems failure, but a full, instantaneous silence. In space, where everything is cold and measured, this kind of precision carries implications. The transmission didn't feel like the end of a journey, it felt like a verdict. The notion that Voyager 2 may have encountered something, an object, an entity, or a boundary, was for decades relegated to speculative fiction. Yet the data surrounding its final broadcasts resists any ordinary explanation. There were no system alerts or mechanical malfunctions in the logs leading up to the anomaly. Its trajectory had remained stable. Its power levels were within nominal range. Its instruments were reporting the same quiet emptiness they always had. And then, as if flipping a switch, the data stopped. Right after registering a proximity alert, what followed was the kind of silence that seems less like absence and more like interruption. In the wake of this event, a small circle of scientists, engineers, and national security analysts convened behind closed doors. What they examined wasn't just the electromagnetic burst or the signal's signature. It was the implication behind the modulation. A pattern too intentional to be noise, too organized to be chance. And what they quietly began to consider, though few dared to speak it aloud, was that Voyager 2 might not have merely passed through space. It may have crossed a threshold, a boundary, a line that was never meant to be touched. For many, the heliopause, the region Voyager 2 had just entered, is symbolic. The boundary where the solar wind of our sun is no longer strong enough to repel the pressures of the interstellar medium. But what if it is more than symbolic? What if it marks a territory shift, not just in physics, but in presence? Beyond the sun's reach lies a dark ocean, one that has never been warmed by our light, a space not empty, but unclaimed, at least by us. Perhaps there are domains in this universe where human technology is not allowed to drift uninvited. Perhaps Voyager 2 was greeted not with curiosity, but with judgment. This possibility transforms the signal's nature. It was not random. It followed a logic unfamiliar to us, but one that suggested coherence, perhaps even intelligence. The electromagnetic burst did not destroy the craft. It didn't melt wires or shatter systems. Instead, it disabled its ability to communicate, to orient, to respond. It neutralized Voyager 2 with surgical precision. That kind of intervention is not passive. It is not accidental. It is controlled and deeply deliberate. And that deliberateness points towards something watching. If that is true, then Earth is no longer invisible. Our presence, once safely isolated within our own solar bubble, has now been logged. The signal we sent to the cosmos, encoded on the golden disk as a symbol of peace and curiosity, may have reached the wrong hands, or rather, may have crossed into a space with hands at all. We often imagine ourselves as the seekers. But perhaps we were the sought. Perhaps we were noticed the moment we reached too far. More alarming than the content of the signal is its speed. For a response to reach Voyager 2 at its current distance, either something had to be waiting on the spot, being waited on already in that corner of space, or the system capable of intercepting it operates on a scale of speed and distance that defies our understanding of physics. If the response was near instantaneous, it suggests either the presence of infrastructure, an outpost, a sentinel, or a surveillance node, or a mechanism of perception beyond material constraints, one that watches the cosmos like an immune system scanning for intrusions. This perspective leads to darker, more unsettling speculation. Perhaps the silence of the cosmos was never emptiness, but policy. Perhaps the lack of contact has not been due to our isolation, but to our immaturity. A galactic quarantine, a containment field. And Voyager 2, by drifting across that invisible fence, triggered a silent protocol, not to communicate, but to correct. If so, then it's likely that Voyager 1, which travels a similar path, will meet the same fate, and any future probes venturing beyond the solar boundary may not find new worlds, but locked doors. A growing consensus among those closest to the data is that this may not have been the first incident of its kind. It may simply be the first we've detected. For decades, we've sent signals and vessels into the abyss, hoping for echo. But now, with the echo returned, we may not like what it says. There are some who propose that Voyager 2 didn't just stumble into an ancient system, but into one that is still active, a surveillance network, a kind of deep space firewall, not hostile, but final, a gatekeeper in the dark. The final moments of Voyager 2 now haunt the corridors of mission control. What was once considered a technological triumph is now seen with the grim reverence of a cautionary tale. The silence it left behind is not the quiet of exhaustion, but the silence of doors closing. In its final act, the spacecraft may have accomplished something far beyond its original mission. It may have proven we are not alone, not in belief, but in evidence. And if so, that evidence was not given gently. It was imposed with precision and without invitation. NASA's official statement was careful. An unexpected signal disruption occurred, they said, adding that further analysis was ongoing. But behind the carefully worded press releases, behind the measured optimism, lies a deeper, darker understanding that something in the void has acknowledged us. It did not return our greeting. It did not reply in music or math. It responded by closing the channel. That gesture alone speaks volumes. It speaks of rules we do not understand, of regions we are not welcome in, of knowledge guarded not by silence, but by enforcement. And perhaps more chilling than the possibility that we were silenced is the possibility that we were recorded. The golden disk carried our languages, our coordinates, our essence. Everything we are, biology, mathematics, culture, compressed into a single offering. We called it a gift, but to others it may have been a breach, a fingerprint on forbidden glass, a signal that something alive, intelligent, and technologically capable now stirs on a blue planet in a quiet corner of a younger galaxy. And that signal may have been cataloged, not answered, but filed away. Voyager 2's last breath has cast a long shadow over our dreams of exploration. We no longer ask if we can go farther, we now wonder what waits if we do. The boundaries of space may be physical, but the limits of our reach may not be defined by engines or radio signals, but by laws we do not yet understand. Cosmic boundaries watched over not by myth, but by systems, sentinels, structures built to keep explorers from becoming invaders. And when that line is crossed, the response may not be dialogue, it may be silence, it may be erasure. What remains of Voyager 2's final signal is now locked away, classified beneath layers of security protocols. The public version has been scrubbed, stripped of its more anomalous details, but those who saw the raw data remember. They remember the modulation, the pattern, the sudden halt, and they remember what that silence sounded like, not the end of a journey, but the closing of a door. And doors, once closed by unseen hands, may never open again. And so, what remains is not merely a disabled probe adrift in the black, but a silence heavy with implication, a silence that now surrounds not just Voyager 2, but the very story we've told ourselves about our place in the cosmos. For decades, we looked outward with unshaken confidence, guided by the belief that exploration was a virtue and that the universe, vast and silent, was waiting for us to arrive with open minds and peaceful intent. But now, as the final moments of Voyager 2 are examined in hushed rooms and locked archives, a new story begins to take shape, one in which the silence is no longer neutral and our transmissions no longer go unanswered, but are quietly, precisely, and deliberately stopped. There is an ancient discomfort buried in the human heart that resurfaces when faced with the unknown, an unease that hums quietly beneath the surface of wonder, a fear that perhaps the vastness above is not empty, but occupied, not chaotic, but governed. Voyager 2's abrupt termination does not bring us confirmation of life beyond Earth, nor a first contact event written in language or mathematics, but something far more unsettling, the presence of agency without introduction, the existence of intent without context, and the realization that beyond a certain line, we may not be alone, and we may not be welcome. In our collective imagination, we have long romanticized the idea of crossing boundaries, of breaching frontiers in the name of progress and peace, believing that whatever lay beyond would surely admire our courage or return our curiosity. But as the data continues to point toward an intelligent disruption, rather than a mechanical failure, the story we must confront is no longer one of triumphant exploration, but of silent consequence. What if Voyager 2, in drifting past the heliopause and into the dark beyond, didn't just represent human ambition, but human trespass? What if there are boundaries not defined by physics, but by intention? Lines drawn not by gravity or solar wind, but by civilizations unknown. And if such boundaries exist, we must then consider what it means to have crossed one. The calm, non-destructive precision of Voyager 2's final signal cutoff suggests a level of control that is not hostile, but resolute. There was no violence, no energy spike that scorched its systems, no signal meant to confuse or threaten, just a quiet, decisive hand that reached through the dark and turned it off. That restraint, that surgical silence, implies not only intelligence but law, not randomness but rules. And when something enforces rules, it means those rules were already in place before we ever arrived. There is something deeply sobering in that idea, that our presence beyond the sun's influence might not have been a step into the unknown, but a step onto someone else's path. For all our instruments and measurements, we still understand so little of what governs the interstellar medium. We don't know who or what monitors the space beyond our solar system. We don't know what ancient thresholds Voyager 2 may have brushed against. But what we do know, with a clarity that is both thrilling and terrifying, is that something responded. Not with curiosity, not with violence, but with closure. And in that closure lies a message more profound than any we could have decoded from 1,000 alien languages. You were seen, and you were stopped. That simple truth reframes everything. It changes how we interpret the silence of the cosmos, not as a canvas waiting to be painted, but as a text already written in a dialect of action, restraint, and power. Voyager 2's mission is no longer just a tale of distance and endurance. It is now a chapter in a much older story, one in which we are not the authors, but the late arrivals. And in that story, to be noticed is not always to be welcomed. It is entirely possible that we have been observed for some time, our radio signals charted, our planetary noise cataloged, our probes tracked from the moment they broke free from our star's magnetic influence. And if so, then Voyager 2 may not have been our first message to the cosmos. It may simply have been the one that crossed the line. What haunts those who understand the implications of that possibility is not the idea that we are watched, but that we were always meant to remain where we were. There's a certain human arrogance that assumes we can go anywhere, learn anything, contact anyone, because our motives are pure or our tools are clever. But beyond the heliopause, motives may mean nothing. Curiosity may not be currency. What Voyager 2 may have encountered is not a threat, but a filter, an ancient system that distinguishes between signal and noise, between intention and permission. And our probe, bearing symbols and songs of peace, may have triggered that filter not because of what it carried, but simply because it arrived uninvited. Still, in this ending there is not only fear, but clarity. There is something undeniably honest about a reply that arrives without ambiguity. The lack of damage, the clean cessation, the unmistakable modulation of a signal crafted to be unreadable yet unmistakably constructed, all these point not toward chaos, but toward structure. And structure implies not only intelligence, but time. If what disabled Voyager 2 is a defense system, a boundary enforcement tool, or a monitoring node, then it is likely older than us, older than most of what we consider modern civilization. And if it still functions, still reacts with precision, then it is likely not abandoned, it is maintained. That idea that something or someone has watched the space beyond our sun and still cares to protect it shifts the frame of cosmic exploration away from endless discovery and toward uneasy restraint. For many who once saw the stars as a final freedom, this realization feels like confinement. But perhaps it is something else. Perhaps it is invitation cloaked in warning, a reminder that not all knowledge comes freely, and not all boundaries are meant to be crossed quickly. Perhaps Voyager 2 was never meant to return answers, but to provoke questions we had forgotten to ask. Questions about scale, about place, about permission, and questions about whether we are truly prepared to be seen by eyes we cannot comprehend, in a language not made of words. In the end, Voyager 2 did what it was built to do. It journeyed farther than any of its creators could have imagined. It carried the hopes and the greetings of an entire species, and in its silence it may have brought back the most profound message of all, that in the infinite dark, beyond the edge of light, someone is listening, someone is watching, and someone, somewhere, has already drawn a line in the stars. And we have now crossed it.